The Thing is unquestionably one of my favorite films of all time, so when I discovered a virtually unseen TV movie with a remarkably similar premise, I just knew I had to see it. I don't think I'm being unreasonable in thinking that this film may have partially inspired The Thing. Now, just to clarify, I'm well aware that The Thing's main inspirations come from the novel Who Goes There and The Thing from Another World, but strictly in terms of atmosphere, tension, and sheer paranoia tearing the characters apart, I believe this is the film that laid the groundwork to those aspects in Carpenter's masterpiece. The plot concerns a researcher named Vogel who dies under mysterious and eerie circumstances. Two men, Robert and Frank, arrive to take his place and find that he's frozen to death, much like the Norwegians from The Thing. As the film goes along, and strange occurrences rattle them in, Robert and Frank begin to distrust one another, especially in Frank's case, whose fear and denial starts decimating his rationality, while Robert seems to be the only one willing to confront the reality of their peril. A Cold Night's Death is such a riveting little gem of a film, and it's so disheartening to see it left forgotten and unloved. While the film may not be perfect, I have a particular bone to pick with its twist ending. Its tension building, disquieting atmosphere, and compelling characters make it more than a worthy watch on a silent snowy morning at 4 a.m. The best way to describe Wolf Lake is tension incarnate. This is honestly one of the most gripping and suspenseful films I've ever watched. From the very first time David and Charlie meet, you can tell something terrible is going to happen, and the tension just keeps building and building as Charlie's derangement slowly begins to corrode his soul. Even his friends seem to be afraid of him, although they're pretty despicable themselves aside from Wilbur, who never wanted any part of this. What really makes the film for me though is Rod Steiger's performance as Charlie. He's genuinely frightening in the role, especially in the end when his hatred has fully consumed him as he nearly murders David. He looks almost demonic here, with his eyes completely obscured in shadow. Interesting fact, this film actually had an alternate but more grim ending where Charlie actually wins and kills everyone. After doing some research on this ending though, I find the ending where Charlie dies far more impactful since he hallucinates his deceased son Danny before collapsing, conveying how much the death of his son affected him and led him to becoming what he is. I really admired the film's staunchly anti-war theme too. My favorite scene would have to be when Charlie and David argue about the ethics of desertion. I couldn't recommend Wolf Lake enough. It's a suspenseful, gritty, and uncompromising film about the futility of war and its psychological effects, providing a compelling insight into political attitudes at the time. So, give it a watch in the eerie dead of night. This is one I've rewatched with my boyfriend recently, and it was a joy to rediscover precisely why I fell in love with this film to begin with. To quote my Lovey, it's a very me film. It's drenched in suspense, takes place in a harsh desert, and prioritizes characterization and atmosphere over cheap spectacle and constant movement. This is what I'd describe as an atmosphere piece. It's admittedly devoid of depth, but depth isn't always a necessity for a film or a piece of art to be enjoyable, or even outstanding. The characterization is truly what enhances the film's quality. Our villain of the piece, Emmett Myers, is a despicable, inhuman monster. There isn't a glimmer of humanity within him. The film does such a fine job at establishing just how grisly and unfeeling he is. You get the distinct impression that he's cherishing every second of Gil and Roy's suffering, making it all the more satisfying when he's finally arrested. His vicious, blustering ego crumbles before our very eyes, as he's revealed to be the slimy coward Roy stated him to be. In reality, despite his brutality, Emmett is a pathetic man whose life was mired in tragedy, causing him to develop his selfish philosophy that his hunger and his pain warranted the hunger and pain of others to fill the gaping void within his husk. William Tallman truly embodies the wretched character of Emmett Myers, and I guarantee this film would have fallen flat without his screen presence. No personal offense meant, but he has the perfect appearance for the character. He looks precisely as frightening as he is. But what would a suspense thriller be without our victims? Gil and Roy make for equally interesting characters. Gil is measurably more stoic, unyielding in his refusal to ingratiate himself to Myers, whilst Roy is more meek and emotionally fragile. However, even at the mercy of this killer, they're always developing plans for escape. So, if you're keen on shadowy, suspenseful atmosphere pieces, The Hitchhiker is an underrated masterpiece begging to be seen. I'm a massive fan of The Fugitive, so whenever I discovered an unseen TV movie starring David Jansen, I was elated. A few days ago, in fact, I rewatched the film with my boyfriend, and while I loved it less on the second watch, it's still more than a worthwhile and enjoyable midnight excursion. The true strength of this film lies within its pure artistry. Despite being a cheaply made TV movie with a rather generic and derivative premise directed by a man well known for his laissez-faire exploitation-geared cinema, it's an incredibly moody, atmospheric, and somber film that truly shines in its silence and character writing. Jansen's performance as Adrian Vico is mired in despair, desperation, and hatred. He's like a morose shadow of a man, and the darkness consuming him is shown perfectly through the film's haunting visuals and disquieting atmosphere of tension. He's a highly unpredictable individual. Long gone are the days of the taciturn, kind-hearted, and moral Kimball. Here, he plays a completely different character, the anti-Kimball, I'd say. The greatest scene in the film would have to be Vico's monologue about feeling dead. In the depths of despair and inebriation, he vents to Koto's character Ernie Green that he doesn't feel anything because he's dead. He squandered his life through a careless act of vengeance, and he knows it, while Ernie is given no choice but to listen in both fear and empathy for the broken shadow of a man. Koto's performance as Ernie Green is steeped in anxiety, fear, but also empathy and loyalty. At first, he's rightfully terrified of Vico, doing whatever he can to escape this grieving madman, but as the film goes along, he slowly tries to help him, save him from a life of endless running and suffering, convincing him that he must face the music of what he's done. Nightchase may lose itself into boredom in a lackluster third act, but I'd still say the film is more than worth watching. It's a quiet, tense, bleak character study of a man on the brink of insanity. Well guys, that was the first episode of 4am Films. I sincerely hope you've all enjoyed it, and feel free to let me know whether any of you have any suggestions for a future episode. That being said, I will see you all next time. Good night, everyone.